Tonight on Talking Points, in the aftermath of a tragic school shooting in Florida, questions are being asked about why these events keep happening.
Israeli police are recommending the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu. Find out more on the charges leveled against Israel's prime minister.
And the unified North and South Korean team are not popular with everyone. Rebekah Castor reports from Pyeongchang with updates on that situation. All that ahead right now.
Some breaking news tonight. Former Trump advisor Rick Gates is finishing up his plea deal with the Mueller probe. This deal means that Gates is ready to work with the investigation into the president's ties with Russia. Good evening, I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. Investigators said Gates has answered all of their questions about anything he witnessed during his time as a campaign advisor. He'll be the third person to make a plea deal with Mueller. We'll have more on this story as it becomes available.
And big changes to the federal government spending were released in President Trump's 2019 budget proposal on Monday. This two-year budget looks to raise spending for military, defense, and Veterans Affairs, while implementing massive cuts to the Environmental Protection Agency and the State Department.
Almost $300 billion are to be allocated towards military and domestic programs over the next 2 years. This proposal also calls for $716 billion in defense spending, which includes money for the border wall and the infrastructure plan. The future of various cuts within Trump's budget proposal are questionable due to Congress increasing spending limits last week. Now, Mike, it seems as if they're making a push for spending, for money to be, incorporated into their plan. However, there are still agencies that are fundamental to how this government functions that are being choked out. Notably, the EPA is being cut by 25%, while you see a spike in defense spending. How on earth are they going to rationalize certain, people getting gutted while others are being glutted?
Well, last year, President Trump made a lot of the same proposals, and Congress did reject most of those, so I don't know, how exactly they're going to treat all of this. But I've seen a lot of people making the case that the GOP has long since abandoned their past platform of having, little to no spending increases, and now they're just spending on things that they want to spend on.
Absolutely. It's becoming a political game.
And something to watch for definitely is going to be President Trump's infrastructure plans and the $200 billion in federal spending he wants to use on that as well. We'll have to leave it there, though.
After the break, we'll take a look at how the Brexit negotiations will affect the Irish border. Stay with us to find out.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it.
Since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Yesterday, the country saw yet another mass shooting. 17 people are dead after a former student opened fire at his old high school. This is the 8th school shooting this year and the 30th mass shooting this year as well. And despite this and the 340 mass shootings last year alone, no substantive policy to fix the issue, whether it is gun control, mental health counseling, or any other fix, has been passed. Here to take us through it all is analyst Dan Prager. Dan, you know, every time there's a mass shooting, you have many on one side saying, you know, now's not the time to talk about gun control. And then you usually have a lot of Democrats bringing up the issue. But it seems like this time, even though the Democrats are saying that some changes need to be made, it seems like there's a lack of actual policy that the Democrats are pushing. This is, I mean, to me, highly unusual. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think at this point, just after all of the mass shootings and after all of the pushes that we've seen in the past, I think both sides are kind of coming to the conclusion that nothing has gotten done in the past, and they're kind of losing hope that anything can get done in the future. So at this point, when they say, hey, we have this policy fixed for that, nobody's come up with anything yet because they think, well, why should I if nothing's going to happen?
A lot of it is, you know, slated to be reactive, but you have proponents also saying that there needs to be greater defenses within schools and as protective measures, whereas a proactive approach hasn't really been entertained. When you look at the shift in policy, what kind of has, you know, the more gusto behind it in terms of it getting done?
I mean, it definitely depends on party. I think overall, if you look at the American public, I think probably bans or background checks usually have more popularity than throwing guns in schools. I would think that the liberal policies probably have a little bit more of the popular vote, especially the ones that are kind of mild. Obviously, a full gun ban or a gun registry isn't going to have that same popularity. I think more Republican-based things are more tiny fixes, and they don't really have, they're more on partisan lines.
Well, I mean, Dan, obviously we'll be looking ahead to any sort of gun legislation or any sort of fix to this issue that gets proposed. As of right now, though, I wouldn't expect much based on what we've seen in the past. So unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. And as Brexit negotiations continue, questions about the Irish border remain. Prime Minister Theresa May says she wants the UK to exit the customs union among EU nations. Such action risks creating a hard border between EU member Ireland and Northern Ireland. The EU says that border checks are inevitable if the UK exits the customs union agreement. Talking Points analyst Conor Wight spoke with Professor Seth Jolly from Syracuse's Maxwell School to break down what this all means for the region.
I'm here with Associate Professor of Political Science, Professor Jolly from the Maxwell School. Professor, how are you?
I'm well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, in general, what we're talking about is Brexit and how that can impact the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. In December, there were several talks that really weren't resolved with regard to how that setup is going to be, with Theresa May pretty hard set on wanting to leave the customs union and the single market setup within the EU. What do you think the outcome ultimately will be?
Last March, they triggered Article 50, which gives them more or less 2 years to finalize all of the agreements and get out of the EU. So they have to make choices about these customs unions issues and also the border. And for the hard Brexit people, the ability to enact borders is really important. And so the only land border is between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And that's where the arguments came to a head in December. They thought they had it settled, but they didn't.
So is there much weight to an idea that maybe they can exit the customs union, they can exit the single market, but maybe have sort of a special situation for Northern Ireland where that, you know, just specific section of Britain stays within that so that there isn't the risk of a hard border between itself and the Republic of Ireland?
Yeah, that's where it really gets complicated. So what May originally wanted, what the Prime Minister of Britain originally wanted, is to have Northern Ireland basically stay the way it is now, keep a no-border zone with Ireland, and that would make both Ireland and Northern Ireland happy. The problem is one of her coalition partners, the leader of the DUP party, doesn't like that. He wants the Northern Ireland to stay in have the same regulatory rules as the rest of the United Kingdom. So he stopped that, one of her coalition partners. And so the Northern Ireland can't keep the Irish rules, which means they can't keep no border. And so what May wants is to have her own regulatory rules, but no border with Northern Ireland. And so the EU is not going to allow that to happen. They have to have a border on all of its external borders, basically. They have to have customs rules between each place. And so that's where it is a hard line between what the EU wants and what the UK wants and then what the Northern Irish want.
So a Copenhagen economic study has said that ultimately the Irish GDP is going to suffer no matter really what the outcome is. So, you know, we've talked about the economics of that, But what about, sort of the social implications of this? Sort of having a free-flowing border was a hallmark of the Good Friday Agreement between Ireland and Great Britain. Is there a risk of sort of, IRA era, Troubles era tensions rising again if a hard border is set?
That is one of the big fears, is that Irish Republicans will use these borders as targets. And since the Good Friday Agreement, and especially the last few years, there hasn't been much of that. And so it is worrisome. And Sinn Féin in particular started to send signals that there will be political trouble in addition to that.
Well, Professor Jolly, thank you so much for being with us. And I'm sure, as this develops, we at Talking Points will continue to monitor that. Back to you guys at desk.
Coming up next, tensions are rising in the Middle East after an Israeli jet was shot down. Find out what that means for Israeli-Syrian relations.
Superheroes? Just four brothers who hate bullies and love this city. Whoa! Gear up, guys.
Tensions rose in the Middle East this weekend following an attack on Syrian and Iranian air defense after an Israeli jet was shot down. Here to break down what happened and why is Talking Points contributor Jack Watson.
Thanks, Josh. This weekend, Israeli forces conducted a series of airstrikes on Iranian and Syrian forces. Airstrikes which an Israeli brigadier general is calling the biggest since the 1982 Lebanon war. According to Israel, the 12 strikes are coming in retaliation to a Syrian missile downing one of Israel's F-16 fighter jets within Israeli territory. Now, these events took place on Saturday and Sunday, and according to Israel, the fighter jet was on a mission to take out Iranian targets in Syria after an Iranian drone flew into Israeli airspace and was shot down. Syrian and Iranian forces say the drone was on a, quote, routine mission. Syria and Iran continued to deny that the drone entered Israeli airspace, but as we saw with an Israeli army video released on Twitter, the drone apparently entered Israeli airspace and was engaged by an Israeli Apache helicopter. Now, this is exactly where the attacks took place. This is northern Israel, and that's where the jet was shot down, and that's where Israel says the Iranian drone moved into Israeli borders. And now near Damascus and close south and southeast of Damascus is where all the depositories, the weapons that the Israeli army was taking out a lot of military targets there, and this exchange seems like the very first of its kind for the two nations, so suffice to say we'll be watching intently for the next development in the apparent exchange of military action, gentlemen.
Jack, complex issue, complex region. However, it seems that Israel and Iran are directly engaging in military activity. Is there a precedent for that?
Not really. Ever since 1947, when the modern Israel was established, these two haven't really engaged militarily. This sets a first. Now, there was an interesting article in the LA Times where a former Israeli Air Force general said that, quote, this means Israeli jets are exposed and vulnerable within Israeli borders. Now, the Israeli borders, according to Israel, were violated multiple times with that jet being shot down and with the drone flying into Israeli airspace. So this is a cause for concern if you're Israel.
And Jack, what sort of relationship, or what kind of kink in the relationship does this throw between the U.S. and Israel?
Well, the U.S. has stayed pretty passive on the issue right now. The Pentagon just released a statement about it. They basically said, they support Israel's right to self-defense, but Russia is really taking a big step on the forefront of peace between the two parties, saying, that they hope that the two sides don't escalate the issue to the point at which they shouldn't.
Jack, certainly an issue that we're going to be focusing on and following here as it breaks down. Thanks for being here.
The Olympic Games continue in Pyeongchang. While many say that now is the time to ease decades-long tensions on the Korean Peninsula, controversy has erupted over North Korea's heavy and some say disruptive presence at the Games. Reporting on that story from Pyeongchang is Talking Points reporter Rebekah Castor.
As the women's ice hockey tournament is underway at the 2018 Winter Games, eyes are on Korea's United Olympic squad. But feelings about the team are divided. Some believe a unified team is exactly what the two countries need, as the two are technically still at war. Although fighting between the countries ended in 1953, no peace treaty was signed. Others completely disagree with the unified team. Large protests broke out in Seoul last week as many South Koreans are angry with North Korea's large presence at the Games. Instead of the Pyeongchang Games, protesters say it's become the Pyongyang Olympics. Pyongyang is the capital and largest city in North Korea. Besides the unified women's hockey team, North Korea's presence was largely felt at opening ceremonies as a representative from North and South Korea carried the Olympic torch to gather up the ski jump before passing it to South Korean figure skater Yoona Kim. And with Kim Jong-un's sister and personal cheering squad also in Pyeongchang, North Korea is hard to miss.
Kim Jong-un has since invited the South Korean president to visit him in the capital since his sister's arrival in the country. This will be the first meeting between North and South Korea in a decade. Reporting from Pyeongchang, I'm Rebekah Castor, CitrusTV News.
Police announced that there is sufficient evidence to indict Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on corruption charges. Israeli police say that he should be charged over alleged bribery cases, which involved receiving large gifts. Mr. Netanyahu denies the allegations and says he will continue as Prime Minister. Tonight, we are joined by Talking Points analyst Thomas St. Hilaire, who will break down all these allegations mean. Thomas, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
What exactly is he being accused of?
Right, well, there's obviously this broader charge of corruption and fraud, and it kind of consists of a number of things. I mean, one of the things that he's being accused of is supposedly working with a media outlet saying, if you provide me with favorable coverage, I will crack down on some of these other outlets. This is, of course, extremely significant. Back on Saturday in a Talking Points webisode, we discussed what's going on in Poland right now and how Israel has come out extremely critical of a new law that was passed that cracks down on speech. So, Netanyahu is going to have to answer a lot of questions regarding some of this hypocrisy on, filtering speech in the region. And the other thing is bribery, as you said. He supposedly received bribes accumulating about $285,000 from businessmen. This took the form of cigars, champagne, you name it. And this is posing a lot of issues for Netanyahu in upcoming elections.
And Thomas, what has the response been about these allegations from Benjamin Netanyahu?
Yeah, well, Netanyahu has come out, of course, denying a lot of these accusations. I mean, he's faced about 15 accusations of similar kind over the last 12 years that he's been there. And he's really citing, actually, the fact that nothing really came of these investigations. He says, look, all these charges have been brought against me, and nothing really came of it. And that's been kind of his ultimate defense.
So what's going to happen now?
Well, one of the things that I think you're seeing is you're seeing, of course, the implications on Netanyahu is his credibility as a leader. I think you're also hearing from, Justice Minister, who's essentially saying, look, even if he is charged by the Attorney General, a decision that we really wouldn't know for, about a couple of months, even if he is charged, that's really not cause for resignation. A charge is not enough. It would have to be.
And Thomas, I'll ask you the same question that I just asked Jack. How is this affecting the relationship between Israel and the United States?
Right. I mean, one of the big things is, Israel has been, it's supposed to be very credible in this regard. And, again, Netanyahu's going back saying, denying these allegations as he has in the past. It hasn't really caused as big of a strain with some of the previous allegations. So there's really no indication, unless something comes of it, that it'll cause a serious strain.
And not only is it not that it might not cause a serious strain with the United States, we have to see how it unfolds within the political realm within Israel. Certainly a contentious topic. Thank you for covering it, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Coming up, SpaceX launches the world's most powerful rocket. We'll find out what that means for the future of the U.S. space program.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
Last week, the world's most powerful active rocket went into space, and it was not government-owned. Elon Musk's Falcon Heavy launched a dummy payload into space, where it is now in orbit. With Musk's craft one of many aiming to dominate the new industry of private space travel, science and technology analyst Josh Feinblatt is with us to give us a little more info. Josh?
Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, successfully launched their Falcon Heavy rocket, which will head to Mars. It is the most powerful rocket in the world by a factor of 2, plus it is much cheaper than the competition. Much cheaper. Every time a Falcon 9 rocket is launched, it's only around $62 million, and the Falcon Heavy is around $90 million. Compare that to the SpaceX competitor, United Launch Alliance, which is around $422 million per launch. And NASA's average launch cost for a space shuttle is estimated to be around $500 million on the cheaper side. One of the best parts of the SpaceX ships are that their boosters return to Earth and can be reused. We just found out yesterday that the core booster crashed from this last launch, but Saturday, SpaceX will launch a monitoring satellite, and there are 2 Falcon Heavy missions that are on the docket for this year. Those will deliver supplies to the International Space Station. But the main purpose of the programs like SpaceX are commercial. Elon Musk says that he wants to make the human race multiplanetary, but that's mainly for space tourism. Elon Musk believes that we can send people to Mars by 2024. He's even sending 2 tours around the moon this year. If you want to take that trip, the cost is just a, quote, significant deposit. But it does beg a lot of questions on the future of space exploration.
Now, Josh, are private companies like SpaceX making NASA irrelevant?
That's a great question. So I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes to NASA's budget. Its budget for 2017 was $19.3 billion, which it seems like a lot when you're working with satellites and rockets, but it's not that much when it's compared to the U.S. budget. If you take a look at the 2017 United States budget, the NASA budget clocks in just under 0.5%. But most Americans think the budget is much more. The average American believes that the NASA budget takes up 1/4 of the entire U.S. spending. So not that much money comparatively is going to NASA, and there are a ton of benefits to NASA that most people don't know about. Since the lack of budget doesn't allow NASA to launch shuttles anymore, there are a lot of projects NASA is working on that are really important. For example, NASA devotes a lot of energy towards satellite technology and global warming. So there's also a project that's going on to try and crash things into meteors to see about deflecting them for planetary defense. So guys, NASA is still extremely important because they're doing projects that are important for our well-being, as opposed to companies like SpaceX or Virgin Galactic that are doing projects for profit. NASA is still very important, and they could definitely use more funding to get back to those launches.
And after the break, it may be 2018, but Mike and I are already looking ahead to 2020. You won't want to miss it.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. executives, authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
The 2012 GOP nominee for President of the United States is relaunching his political campaign, this time for Utah's Senate seat. Mitt Romney is expected to announce his candidacy for Utah's Senate seat in a web video this Friday. As a vocal opponent of President Trump, coupled with a prominent profile across the country and party, Romney's political career puts him in a competitive position to win the seat of retiring GOP Senator Orrin Hatch. I'll be looking ahead to see which leaders his rollout focuses on. Will he push to reform his party or its leaders? And does he make it about himself or his country?
Yesterday, 2020 hopeful Cory Booker announced that he will no longer take corporation PAC money. This is a surprising move by a politician who has been dogged by his fundraising from Big Pharma in the past. It is widely assumed that Booker is one of the front runners to represent the Democrats in 2020, and this move could create a new precedent. Bernie Sanders didn't take PAC money in his 2016 bid for president, but I certainly did not expect this strategy to continue. The question remains as to whether declining PAC money will be a prerequisite for Democratic hopefuls vying for the presidency. And Josh, when we look ahead to 2020, obviously Cory Booker, one of the huge names, but there's also other names floated like Andrew Cuomo, Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, Bernie set the precedent with not taking PAC money. Obviously, Hillary Clinton had a ton. So the question really becomes, I think, whether or not, what are Democratic voters going to be expecting? Are they going to favor candidates that don't take PAC money?
I don't think they can, because candidates who don't take PAC money don't win. And that's the bottom line. When you go and see how much Bernie's average donation is, it is a great stat to have. It is a great thing to strive for, but ultimately Hillary got there because she had the PACs behind her. You'd rather unify as a collective force and get your message out in the best way possible than, have these separate arguments that don't exactly pertain to getting anything accomplished later down the road.
To be fair, though, I think a lot of the DNC operation and a lot of their efforts were strongly more so behind Hillary Clinton than Bernie Sanders. So I think while it would be much more difficult, right, to go against Donald Trump and while not taking PAC money, I think if the party in the DNC can embrace it, if they can get things in line to really get around a singular candidate, then I think it may be possible. But I really think there will be a significant number of Democratic voters that are going to be expecting that PAC money is not taken by these candidates.
That's a strategy that's of conflict when it comes to the party, is who will they endorse when it comes to, devoting more of their resources? Will they give more of the resources to the people who need it, or the people that they think, we can help and get farther along the trough? So it's a matter of where they're able to find that best opportunity and then executing.
And then on the other hand, right, if you're not going to take PAC money, you have to be pretty popular to be able to reel in. And Bernie Sanders was very popular for where he started out.
Right.
But when I look ahead to 2020, I really don't see excitement surrounding these candidates. So I don't know how far they can go. And to be fair, Cory Booker, in my opinion, in the past has always been sort of an opportunistic type, like Hillary Clinton, sort of seizes the opportunity when it's there. I think he saw an opportunity after hearing from a lot of constituents that he did not want it, that they did not want him to take PAC money, that this was a good thing that could help him in the future. But we'll have to leave it there. And that's all we have for Talking Points tonight. I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. Be sure to check us out, CitrusTV News, as well as our websites and webisodes coming this week.